Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to this segment of Coach Gurbani's a-sabad-a-day. Our recitation is Gauri Gwareri Mahalla Tija. So kyon visra jiske ji Parana, so kyon visra sab mahe samana, jit seviye dargah pat parwana. हर के नाम विटों बल जाऊं, तू विसरह तद ही मर जाऊं रहाओ. तिन तू विसरह जे तुद आप पुलाएं, तिन तू विसरह जे दूजे पाए, मनमुख अज्ञानी जोनी पाए. जिन एक मन तुठा से सतगुर सेवा लाए, जिन एक मन तुठा तिन हर मन वसाए. गुरमती हरि नाम समाए. जिना पोते पुन से ज्ञान बिचारी, जिना पोते पुन तिन हउमै मारी. नानक जे नाम रते तिनको बलिहारी. In this passage, the essential thrust is a longing and a yearning for self-knowledge and self-realization. हर के नाम विट्टहों बल जाऊं, तू विसरह तद ही मर जाऊं रहाओ. Without awareness of the self, I am dead. तू विसरह तद ही मर जाऊं. The Guru is calling for a spiritual awakening, a rebirth, as it were, in the spirit. And I submit myself and my strength to the wisdom of the self. So the third Nanak, Amar Das, is giving expression to a yearning that we all feel, whether we are aware of it or not, and that is the longing, the search for our true selves and self-realization. He begins the passage by saying, So kyon visara jiske ji parana, so kyon visara sab mahe samana. How can that be forgotten? Who is the vital breath of life? How can that be forgotten? Who is equally present in everyone? And his advice, Jit seviye dargah pat parwana. Serve that one at the altar of the self and restore your good name, Pat Parwana. In a sense, what is being suggested in this verse is that the self cannot be forgotten because it is the vital force of life and is present everywhere. So where is the question of forgetting? And yet this expression is also one of surprise, as if to say, how can that self be forgotten? How is it even possible? But he adds that we lack this awareness because of haume, our ego consciousness, which deludes us into believing that we are a separate center of experience. So therefore, sacrifice yourself, jit seviye. Seviye commonly translated as to serve, but to serve carries the implication of sacrifice. So sacrifice yourself, the ego, Chit seviye. Dargah. Another concept that we need to understand, dargah is often used to describe a Sufi shrine, but its Persian etymology actually suggests that it means a threshold. And the belief is that it is a threshold to a higher consciousness. And those who visit Sufi shrines believe that in that space, communication is possible with the saint in whose memory the shrine has been established. So we should understand dargah to mean a threshold of the consciousness. So what this is suggesting to us is to, through the sabad, to elevate our consciousness to that point where the self, the transcendent, can be met. In other words, where you can transcend your ego consciousness. That is the dargah. And then Pat Parvana. Now, Pat Parvana has been translated almost uniformly as finding honor and acceptability. What we are suggesting is that the words have several different connotations as well. And so it could well be that an alternative interpretation or understanding of these words could be possible. But we encourage readers and listeners to form their own opinion. So we've already talked about dargah, and pat is translated as honor, but pat also connotes a leaf. It could mean a leaf, as in patta. It also suggests the act of falling, patit ho jana, or bending. Similarly, parvan hona, to be accepted, is the common understanding, but it also suggests oblations, bending again. Parvana can also mean a moth. It could also mean a message, a warrant. So the suggestion here is to think of this line as sacrificing yourself at the threshold of the self and re-establish your authentic nature. And then the Guru explains this business of forgetfulness. How and why does it come about? How have we forgotten? He says, Tin tu visarai je tud aap pulaye. Now literally translated, this means they forget you, tin tu visarai, whom you cause to forget, je tud aap pulaye. Now this can be a little troubling and surprising. He goes on to say, Tin tu visarai je duje paye. They forget you because of love of the other. And we'll talk about love of the other. Manmukh agyani jo ni paye. And the result is that the mind-driven manmukh, they're ignorant. In their ignorance, they perpetuate the mode of generation. In other words, cause and effect. Meaningless cycles is what they get caught in. What this is suggesting is that everything is in hukum. Even forgetfulness of the self is in hukum. It's part of how the cosmic play has been designed. It is a play of opposites. So forgetfulness is a necessary precondition and the opposite of becoming aware of the self. And so therefore, those who are in forgetfulness are also in hukum. We are all a part of this very large cosmic drama, and we are playing our roles. But the Guru is saying, don't be a manmukh. Get out of that trap, because it's meaningless and it brings nothing but sorrow. So that's the injunction here. And then further to this, he says, Jin ik man tutta, se Satgur seva lai. Jin ik man tutta. Tutta means to please, to be in love, out of love. When it pleases the self, the mind is guided to the Guru Enlightener. And when it pleases the self, it comes to abide in the mind. Tin ik man tutta, tin har man vasai. And Gurmati har naam samay. Through the doctrine of the Guru is self-knowledge received. So again here, when it pleases the self, would suggest that things are really not in our hands. And the fact of the matter is that they really aren't. The span of our control is exceedingly limited, if at all we have any control. But if we come to the Sabad through some stroke of good fortune, we should consider ourselves blessed, because it gets us out of that cycle. Jina pote pun se gyan bichari, fortunate are those who reflect on self-knowledge. Jina pote pun tin haume amari, fortunate are those who have overcome the ego. Nanak jo naam rate tin ko balihari, says Nanak, I follow those who are imbued with self-knowledge. I submit to those, I would sacrifice myself to those who can teach me how to cultivate self-knowledge. So here, the importance of self-knowledge has been emphasized again and again, without which our existence is quite meaningless, without value, regardless of what we might think. So the need is to really look within and find our true selves, and that happens through spiritual wisdom, what we call gurmat. On that note, until the next time, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.